Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgie Calvin-Smith. Tonight, leaders from across the continent gather in Kigali for the AU's annual summit, but a question remains over who will be leading them in the longer term. A vote on a replacement for the incumbent doesn't deliver a majority to any of the candidates. Also, a week after a ceasefire was first announced to try and contain fighting in Juba that sparked a mass exodus of foreigners and left hundreds dead, some still in the South Sudanese capital still live in fear and uncertainty. And thousands of protesters flood the streets of Durban, demanding better access to treatment for HIV/AIDS as the city hosts a global conference on the challenges faced in tackling the virus and disease. But first, the African Union unexpectedly still faces a big question about its makeup. Members will have to wait until at least next January for a new head to take over from incumbent Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Now, she was due to stand down, but at the body's summit in Kigali on Monday, leaders from the continent couldn't agree on a successor. Duncan Woodside is in the Rwandan capital covering developments at the AU's gathering for us. He joins us now. So, Duncan, we had candidates from Botswana, Equatorial Guinea, Uganda, all throwing their hats into the ring, all falling short. What was lacking?
Well, indeed, that's right. Yes, there were the Foreign Minister of Botswana, the Foreign Minister of Equatorial Guinea, and the former Vice President of Uganda. All of those were in the running for this post after Zuma said that she did indeed want to step down. Many people speculating that she will be selected as the African National Congress's next presidential competitor. Now, what happened was that there was a vote today, and none of the candidates managed to get the required two-thirds majority to take on this largely ceremonial role.
Another development at the summit on Monday was Morocco's request to join the organisation 32 years after leaving it. What prompted its desire to return to the fold?
Well, yes, Morocco left in 1984. That was when the African Union was a different body. It was the Organisation of African Union. And the Organisation of African Unity. The reason that Morocco left was that it felt that it had been sidelined by members. It felt aggrieved at the fact that members had recognised Western Sahara as an independent state. Now, Western Sahara was annexed by Morocco in the mid-1970s, so that's been the sticking point ever since then. Morocco, though, over the last few months has decided to take a slightly less robust stance. What they've said is that they're prepared to offer autonomy to Western Sahara, albeit under the sovereignty of Morocco itself. At the moment, though, there's still a lot of negotiations, and any re-entry of Morocco into the fold is likely to be a protracted process, according to people that we've spoken to here.
One of the big issues looming large is South Sudan's crisis. So what is the bloc's position on the violence threatening to derail the peace process there?
South Sudan has absolutely dominated the agenda of this summit, and that's no surprise when there has been fierce fighting between troops loyal to President Salva Kiir and his Vice President Riek Machar this month. That claimed the lives of hundreds of people, and the clashes lasted for nearly a week in the capital, Juba. Now, on Saturday evening, there was a meeting on the sidelines of the summit attended by various heads of state and also the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. That resulted in a very strong communique being issued, one that would recommend the adoption of a rapid intervention force in South Sudan to operate under the existing UN mission, but with a much stronger mandate to intervene in the case of civilians being threatened. Now, that was a proposal that was formally adopted by the heads of state, and it will now go to the Peace and Security Council for formal ratification there, and then after that to the UN Security Council. Now, this is really important because if those troops are deployed, it will run directly counter to the wishes of South Sudan's President Salva Kiir, who said that he won't tolerate the deployment of one single extra foreign soldier on his country's soil.
Thanks very much. Duncan Woodside there for us in Kigali. Well, as he mentioned, the AU's plans reflect international concern about the stability of South Sudan as it tries to emerge from over 2 years of civil war. The recent resurgence of violence left hundreds dead in Juba and prompted many governments to evacuate their nationals. South Sudanese left behind in the capital continue to struggle in the aftermath.
The fighting may have stopped in Juba, but the struggle for survival has not. Desperate for food and shelter, thousands lined up at this church in search of aid after they were forced from their homes in last week's violence. Many were still unsure if their loved ones had survived.
The bullets were flying around, so I ran away with 4 of my brother's children. I don't know where the parents are. I don't know if they're alive. Or just running, taking along whoever we could.
Many survivors haven't dared to return home, afraid of what they will find. Bodies are still being discovered in the Jebel area, where most of the fighting took place. We weren't allowed to speak to anyone here, but saw government soldiers and young men pillaging through abandoned homes, piling their loot onto anything that could move. The capital, Juba, is relatively stable after the government pushed out opposition forces, but some areas are still not safe for civilians. Over the weekend, we saw bodies of at least 2 civilians who were killed in recent violence, while others were harassed at checkpoints. The spokesperson of the National Army, the SPLA, denied widespread looting and ongoing harassment by government soldiers.
I would say that the SPLA is a huge army. You cannot rule out having some bad elements within the force. But we made it very clear that whoever has been affected by behavior of some of our servicemen in terms of looting should come forward. And if there are SPLA soldiers who are involved, then they are brought to book.
But few here trust that those responsible for the destruction of their properties and the deaths of so many will be brought to account. For now, all they can do is hope for more aid and start the painful process of rebuilding their lives.
Simona Fulton there reporting for us. Well, in Kenya, 4 policemen have been charged over a triple murder that sparked uproar in the country last month. Human rights lawyer Willie Kimani, his client, and driver's bodies were found dumped in a river near Nairobi at the start of July. That was a week after they disappeared, following a court hearing in which one of those suspected of murdering them was the accused. Kimani's remains showed signs of torture. All 4 of the policemen have pleaded not guilty. Thousands of scientists from around the world have headed to South Africa for a conference on AIDS. The country has the largest treatment program in the world. Many researchers are warning that despite gains made, combating the illness is still a formidable battle.
Several thousand people took to the streets of Durban to put pressure on world leaders. They said they weren't doing enough to tackle AIDS. The South African city is hosting the 21st International AIDS Conference, and the mood is somber. The head of UNAIDS said he needed more resources, and he fears the target of ending AIDS by 2030 could slip away.
I'm scared because I'm not seeing decline on new infections amongst adults. And that is scaring me because we have 1.9 million new infections every year since 5 years ago.
Actress Charlize Theron was at the summit. She's founded an AIDS charity working with teenagers in South Africa, her home country.
HIV and AIDS is the #1 killer of adolescents in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. It is the #2 killer of adolescents globally. Why are we not caring about that? Our young people are dying at a rate that should frighten us. And yet somehow we just don't talk about them at all. They are the forgotten ones.
The AIDS summit was also held in Durban back in 2000. At the time, activists slammed then-President Thabo Mbeki, who said the disease was caused by poverty, not by the human immunodeficiency virus. Mbeki had denied millions access to antiretroviral drugs. Today, 36.7 million people worldwide live with HIV/AIDS, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, but only 17 million are receiving treatment.
And tributes are being paid to a South African racing driver who died trying to reach the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. Gugu Zulu was making the track for a charity marking the date late anti-apartheid hero Nelson Mandela died. The 38-year-old rally driver and TV presenter was climbing with his wife and others when he reportedly started finding it difficult to breathe. Pretoria has paid its respects to the 3 times national rally champion, calling him a great and talented motorsport athlete. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us.